Hi, my name is Jeff McKissack, President of Defense by Design, but today I'm coming to you on behalf of the International Legal Technology Association. And why is that? Well, obviously you're planning to attend an upcoming event on behalf of ILTA, and they want to make sure, just as I want to make sure, that all your experiences are positive ones as you come to the event, especially where safety and security are concerned. And again, why me? Over a number of years, I've been a speaker and guest lecturer for the International Association of Exhibitions and Events, as well as the Society of Government Meeting Planners, as well as numerous event companies around the United States, all about keeping people, not the places, but the people, safer when they're attending these special events, conferences, conventions, workshops, etc. And that's what today is about. And it kind of reminds me of a story years ago. I grew up in a small fishing town in North Florida, where fishing was vocation, but hunting was recreation. And years ago, my grandfather was taking my two older brothers out one season for hunting. So he gives them their orange vest and their orange hats. Why? For safety. My middle brother, who was in law enforcement his whole career, but back then we were just kids, he gives the hat and the vest back to my grandfather and says, "I'm not going to wear that, it looks stupid." And my grandfather spoke these words of wisdom years ago. They're the base of what we're doing today. He said, "Son, it's hunting season. When you walk in those woods, you're either wearing orange or you're wearing feathers." And that's what this video is about today, to make sure when you leave the convention center, when you leave the hotel, when you leave bars, when you leave restaurants, when you're going to and coming from, that when people look at you, they don't see feathers, they see orange. This is about keeping you safer, not just the places you attend. There are several proverbs, several sayings I want to go over today that really set the framework for what we're going to be discussing. Number one, first and foremost, and anyone who has known me for any period of time or will ever hear me speak will hear me reference this phrase. It's one of the things I've been noted for decades. Number one, there are no such things as safe or unsafe places. There are only safe or unsafe people. And this is why I said at the beginning, the whole goal here is to keep you as an individual safer, to keep people safer, not the places, because places are neutral. People are not. It's never about where you are. It's about who you're around or who is around you. We've all seen it play out on television. At some point, a news story comes up where there's been an act of violence. Something tragic has happened. And somehow, not intentionally, but somehow the reporters always seem to find that one person that comes on camera that makes that statement. We've all heard it one time or another. What is that statement? "Oh, I can't believe something like that happened here." Because where we live, work, shop, play, attend this event is so, what's that S word? Safe. Again, there are no such things as safe or unsafe places, only safe or unsafe people. That's what we're trying to make you today, a safer person. Number two, there is no safety in numbers, but for sure, you're still safer in numbers. Unfortunately, I think this comes from me when we were all teenagers and mom and dad, and we were heading out the door, and they said, "Where are you going?" "Well, oh, mom, dad, don't worry. I'm going with so-and-so and such and such." Why? Because there's this mentality that when we're out with other people, that we're safe. Well, again, you're safer for sure, but there is no safety in numbers. Numbers can be greatly skewed when you went with two people, but they have four or five. Numbers can be greatly skewed when you went to the happy hour but left a little bit happier than everyone else. All those things factor into play, which says that it's not about the numbers. But for sure, you always should defer to working and walking where there are groups of people versus by yourself. Number three, an unknown person is an unpredictable person, and it's what you don't know that can hurt you. You simply cannot look at a person, male, female, young, old, no matter what the case may be, and assume that you know everything you need to know about that person or how they will respond in a given situation. You can be dealing with a normally rational person, but caught up in an irrational moment. So you should never engage and enrage someone that you have no history to whatsoever. Number four, victims and predators alike come in all shapes and sizes. Several years ago, I had a gentleman who was the vice president of a very large event planning company. He attended one of my events. He actually had me speaking to their audience. And afterwards, he came up and said, Jeff, I had never thought about this before, but I was at home one day and I went to the mall and I was walking into the mall just off the clock, just being a person navigating the planet. And so I walked to the mall. This young 10, 12-year-old girl comes up to me and she's got tears in her eyes. And, sir, I'm lost and I need to call my parents. Of course, I'm a father. My heart goes out. I said, oh, honey, absolutely. What can I do? I need to call my mom and dad. Oh, absolutely. He pulls out his phone. He said, honey, what number do I? Oh, no, I'll call them. He said, no, you seem kind of upset. Let me call them, but I need to talk to, oh, no, honey, I'll make sure you talk to them. I'll just be the one that dials the number. But, mister, I really need to use your phone. And again, honey, I'm going to make the call. You're going to talk to mom and dad. It's going to be okay. But I'm going to hold on to the phone. He said at that point, this teary-eyed girl just went Jekyll and Hyde and looked at him, turned around, walked to the curb where a car pulls up, a woman driver, the young girl hops in and they speed off. He said, it dawned on me, this pint-sized predator was after my cell phone. And we'll get into other stories along the way, but this is, again, an illustration of the point that victims and predators alike come in all shapes and sizes. And we'll definitely hone in on that aspect of a good story later on as well. And then finally, what happens in Vegas no longer stays in Vegas, but it does stay on social media. So as we talk about your personal as well as professional reputation management while you're at the event, that is going to be something we talk about as well. There are two common traits that predators around the planet look for when they're stalking their prey. And I'd like to use that word predators. We typically think of that in terms of sexual, but it's not always the case. I'm talking about even street predators who are not simply looking for prey, they're looking for the easiest prey. But whether you watch shows like Criminal Minds or CSI, or you watch the Animal Planet, Animal Channel, all predators on 2 legs and 4 legs look for 2 main things when they're stalking their prey. And that's what we want to make sure you're aware of as well. Number 1, they look for people who are distracted. And by the way, what do you figure is the number 1 source of distraction today? I wonder. I just can't imagine. Can you? Too often, we're looking down. Forget looking around. Matter of fact, when I started this work 35, almost 40 years ago, my biggest challenge then was challenging people, look around, be aware of what's around you. Now, I just settle if people looked up, let alone looked around. That is a huge distraction that obviously predators look for when they're stalking not just prey, but the easiest prey, someone who is not paying attention, someone who is not in the moment. Also, for those of you who may be in a new area, maybe you're at a very cool place that ILTA has chosen for its venue, and you think, oh, I just want to go out and do some sightseeing. I want to go on a tour here in town. Okay, but does somehow your actions, your behaviors, the group you're with kind of scream, I'm not from here? Because street predators know how to pick up on such individuals. In fact, they're the low-hanging fruit that often will be targeted because they know most people are not going to stick around to file their police report, to come back as a witness. So for those reasons, you want to watch your behaviors. Yes, you can be a tourist, but that doesn't mean you have to act like or look like a tourist. Keep that in mind as well. When it comes to confrontations, arguments, fights, or nowadays protests, things that draw our attention to one thing or another, it's the shiny object, the dangling keys, we're attracted to these certain things. If we're attracted to those things, we're paying attention to them. What are we not paying attention to? Your wallet, your backpack, your phone. All of these points of distraction become fodder for those who may be pickpockets, who may be thieves, who simply are, again, looking for that easy mark of something to quickly steal and be gone. Also, if someone approaches you, whether friend or foe, obviously if someone is approaching you, that attracts your attention. But if someone says, hey, excuse me, sir, ma'am, I have a quick question for you. While you're paying attention to them, what are you not paying attention to as far as around you? Anytime someone approaches me that I'm not aware of in a public place, if they're literally approaching me, my first response is to just look over my shoulder to make sure if they're approaching me from this side, someone else isn't approaching me from another side. So be aware that when people approach you, even with a smile on their face, even dressed nicely, that means nothing. Again, what did we say before about victims and predators? They come in all shapes, sizes, including attire, including demeanor. So be aware of that. And again, we'll hone more to this in the good stories in a bit. Someone asking for help can be a distraction because you're tied into that story. Someone comes up, excuse me, can I ask you for directions? Could I ask you, oh, do you know a good restaurant in the area? Someone is mentally distracting you. And most of the time that's innocent. Most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, it's innocent. But just don't always let that be your default thinking when someone is coming up asking for your help. In fact, we'll talk about this later on, but the assistance lure is the number one lure used because it can be so distracting. And then finally, emergencies. Yes, emergencies can be very distracting. Someone's locked out of a car, someone's baby is in a car, someone approaches you saying someone's had a heart attack. That's very distracting in those kind of situations because now you're really focused because you're a decent human being who wants to help if someone's caught up in an emergency. But that too, while in most, and I would say the majority of cases will be exactly what it appears to be, don't let that always be your default thinking when someone comes up to you. More on good stories later. The main thing here I'm trying to allude to is maintain situational awareness. A lot of times we talk about environmental awareness, how to use your environment to your advantage, but this is more important, situational awareness, because again, we've all seen bad things happen in nice places, which means it's not about the place, it's about the people, and it's not about the environment, it's about situations that can occur, that can escalate. So maintain your situational awareness. The second thing your predators look for when they're stalking easy prey is disorientation. Getting lost in an unfamiliar area. If you've never been to this city or this venue before, it can sometimes be easy. I remember the first time I went to New Orleans for an event. The streets kind of wind around. It can be kind of confusing. So make sure you know where you're going to, where you're coming back from. Know your areas. Easy sometimes, very easy to get lost in an unfamiliar area. But there are people that pick up on that as a scent that you're putting off to would-be predators who are, again, looking for that easy prey. Oh, they don't know where they're at. Maybe I'll volunteer to help them, except I'm really not going to be helping them. Forgetting where you parked. Now, maybe for this event, you Ubered in, you Lyft, but maybe you drove in. And maybe you're in a large parking lot because there's a large event. Do you remember where you parked? This is one good time, FYI, for future use. Let's say even back home, you go to a major sporting event, you go to a concert, you go to the airport, you can't remember. And you know you're going to be maybe, let's say, indulging when you're inside. This is a good time to take out your phone. This is one time I give you permission. Take out your phone. Where am I in this parking lot or parking garage? Oh, G4, take a picture. That way, later on, you don't have to guess where you're parked. You'll know. You can pull it up and go, oh, I'm at G4. But forgetting where you parked is a very common thing. Taking a picture of where you parked and any type of landmark nearby can help you as far as finding your way back to your car. Not knowing where or who is picking you up. Most of us have heard the stories about someone getting into a car they thought was their Uber driver, they thought was their Lyft driver. And yes, while these stories are out there, most people are wary of it. After a few drinks, they may not remember that story. So make sure you know who is picking you up and where they are picking you up to avoid something very, very simple. Also, another point of disorientation are happy hours that get a little too happy. If you leave the happy hour the happiest of all, you probably want to be that person that's traveling with other people. You certainly want to make sure you put all the precautions in place to make sure you get back to or go to where you need to next safely. It's very easy to get in these environments, get a little carried away, but make sure you're not being carried away. Make sure you've got the mechanisms in place to get you back to the hotel or to the venue safely. Another point of disorientation, someone slips something into your drink, male or female. We hear these stories and often attribute them to happening to women. I know at least two cases. One was here in Dallas where I'm filming this, where one of our very expensive hotel properties had a situation where a young lady was approaching men down in the hotel bar. And she convinced them to take her up to the room, and once they got up there, they had a few more drinks. But she slipped something into his drink, knocked him out, and robbed them blind. And this happened to 4, 5, 6 men that was reported by the local police. After that story hit the local media, 2 weeks later, the exact same story happened in Atlanta, in the Buckhead area, another very nice, expensive area, where these female predators knew exactly where they were stalking their prey. They knew the hotels, they knew the zip code, they knew where they had people, they had expensive jewelry, they had a lot of money on them, they had the credit cards. She did the exact same thing. It wasn't the same woman. Yes, any of these things can happen to men or women. So when you're out, whether you're down in the hotel lobby bar or you're out having a drink, I don't care if it's water, maintain control of those drinks. More on that later, but just a point of disorientation is when someone creates the disorientation for you. You were doing everything right, but someone else compromised that drink. And then finally, sickness or illness. Let's face it, if you're not feeling well, that can be disorienting as well. In fact, years ago, I was traveling and I had been city to city to city, and some of you know the routine, and I'd been on the road for 5 or 6 weeks. I'd even forgotten what rental car I was driving at that point. But I got to my hotel, and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was just really, really sick. And I need to go to a Walgreens or somewhere to get something. And I just was very disoriented. And it's a situation I had to take care of as well. I needed to get something to help me, but at the same time, I knew I was at risk, especially going out at 2 or 3 in the morning. But at the same time, I was aware of that situation. I was aware of my vulnerability, which is the point here. Maintain self-awareness, not just situational awareness, but when it comes to disorientation, maintain self-awareness. Know your limits, know your vulnerabilities, and always, always take those extra precautions. Another point I have to bring up, I wish more conferences and conventions put this out there. So far in all my travels and all the events I've spoken at, I've only seen one conference where they had any signage whatsoever in the building alluding to this. Please do not wear your ILTA credentials unless on-site at the event or directed to my staff for off-site events. It's very easy to send off that signal to would-be street predators, again, who are looking for non-local, easy prey, that you're not from here, you're not familiar with surroundings, you probably won't come back to testify against them, and all that is broadcast by that lanyard around your neck or that name badge that you wore out in public, going from point A to point B. Simply put, when you're not actually at the event, when you're not actually attending an event, maybe even off-site where you need that badge to get in, make sure you tuck it away in your purse, tuck it away in your pocket, somewhere that other people won't see, A, the fact that you're here attending this event, and B, any other information like maybe your name that they can use against you. Or some of you, they even have the position your company may be on the badge. Don't let someone that you don't know use those things against you later to fake some form of familiarity. When it comes to money and valuables, watch for those watching you at ATM machines and or leaving banks. In fact, it's called jugging here in the United States, where people are watching people leave the bank that obviously made a withdrawal rather than a deposit, and following these people to their next stop or even to their driveways at home. Even more so, again, since you're not from the city, maintain that sense of situational awareness when you're at ATM machines accessing money. Make sure someone else is not watching you. Again, it's that orange and feathers we talked about before. Also, do not flash your cash in restaurants or bars where others may take notice. Distribute money over your person. Put it in your purse, put it in your handbag, keep it somewhere else. If you're a guy, maybe put it in a couple of pockets, put it in your jacket. Distribute the money accordingly, but don't have it all in one place. Especially when it comes to your ID, make sure you always maintain that in case you need it later. If you're traveling overseas, absolutely. Obviously, you have a copy of your passport back at the hotel or somewhere else in case you need it later. Do not wear valuables out in public, especially when traveling alone or with limited company. I've often done events for high-net clients and insurance companies and financial groups have brought me in to speak to. And the one thing I've talked to them, okay, you're taking an evening going to the symphony, you're going to an art exhibit, whatever the case may be. And of course, you want to dress appropriately for the event. You have the nice watch, you have the nice jewelry, you have the nice necklace. Okay, but that doesn't mean you have to constantly wear it. So when you're in transition from A to B, maybe put those things away. And then when you get to the event, excuse yourself to the men's room or the women's room, put them back on, get nice and have everything ready to go. And then before you leave, excuse yourself again, put those things away so you don't have that shiny object that others may be paying attention to when you're out in public. Again, it's all about maintaining self-awareness. All right, so let's talk about your safety at the hotel itself, where a host hotel or an auxiliary hotel. Be mindful of your room key or room access. Some hotels have now gone to various points of wireless access and apps that you can download rather than actually having a physical key. Whatever the case may be, maintain that sense of where your room key and that access is in case others try to compromise it. Do not call out or shout out your room number in common areas. This is something that's been funny for me. I've seen it over many, many years. Especially people are all arriving. It's that friend you haven't seen since the last event, and you show up at the hotel. Hey, we're going to meet later. Yeah, I'm in room 302. Why don't you come down? Hey, I'm in room 406. Don't be that person, because there are people who purposefully scout hotel lobbies looking for that information so they know what rooms potentially compromise later. Don't just give out, let alone shout out, your room location to others that you don't know who are occupying those common areas. Be aware of anyone calling your room direct that you did not expect. I was speaking to the risk manager of a very well-known national hotel chain, very upscale national hotel chain. He said, Jeff, we've had to address this on several occasions because what was happening is people were coming into the hotel and they were calling between rooms. And they would call a room because they'd already scoped out who the person was downstairs. They would call the room and say, yes, this is the front desk, and we've had a situation where your card didn't go through. We just need to reestablish the card or get another card that we can process. People didn't think anything about it, thinking it was the front desk. Again, a good story. Thinking it was front desk, and next thing you know, their card had been compromised. So the hotel, the risk manager said, what we did then is make sure all the calls had to come from the front desk, so you couldn't call room to room. Well, they thought ahead of that. So then they were calling into the restaurant or the bar, and when the restaurant or bar would pick up, they would say, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to call you, I was trying to call room 302. And then the bar or restaurant staff, not aware of the situation, what did? They just want to be the good person. They connected them directly to the room. They're always trying to circumvent these systems. Point being, if someone calls your room that you didn't expect, you were not asking for, always double check the front desk to make sure that person is who they say they are, or just go downstairs yourself and address the issue. If approached by anyone acting suspicious, make ILTA as well as the hotel itself aware. Do you see someone kind of roaming the halls? Do you see someone kind of hanging out in certain areas, or you pick up certain body language that just doesn't seem right? Listen to those instincts. We've all heard the saying, if you see something, say something. That also goes for if you hear something, say something. But if it raises your attention, if it raises your instincts to the point that this just doesn't seem right, don't let that go. Bring it to the attention of our staff, or bring it to the attention of the hotel or the convention center or where we're having the meeting. Don't just let it go unchecked. If at the hotel bar, stay mindful. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating this. Stay mindful of your drinks as well as any unwanted attention. In other words, maybe someone approached you, you weren't that interested, or you were carrying another conversation, but the person obviously had interest in you. Maybe you turn your back, maybe someone else walks up and you turn around to greet them. Was that person still next to you? Is that drink still there that you just turned your back on? It takes a split second for you to be distracted that allows someone to potentially compromise that drink. So again, if someone approaches you in an unwanted attention type scenario, kind of make sure that person stays on your radar as where they are in the room as you're interacting with others in the room and having those drinks. And finally, never let someone in that you do not know. I don't care what the story, someone banging on the hotel door after hours, you were about to go out for a late night jog or walk. Oh, I forgot my fob. Could you let me in? Oh, I had my key card. Could you let me in? The answer to that is no, because you don't know who that person is. You don't know by letting them in what you may be giving them access to, or who you may be giving them access to. Unfortunately, over the years, I've seen these turn into stories where domestic abusers found out where their victims were located in a hotel and used that ruse to get inside, and other things happen tragically. Do not let someone own property by simply allowing them due to a good story. Maintain control. If there's any question, call for security. All right, I keep alluding to the good story. The reason I do so is because I'm my mentor. My background, FYI, I worked with an investigative reporter and producer for the national networks for a number of years. And this is a man that interviewed the likes of Ted Bundy, Henry Lee Lucas, and others. And when he had a chance to do so and interview them, he didn't really care why they did what they did. He wanted to know how they did what they did. So after over 1,000 of these interviews, he found the lures they used fell into 13 basic categories. And this is when I started working with him, and we started doing these stories for the media. And one of the things that we did in the late 80s for a number of very well-known shows that you would know the names of, we went from Ivy League school on one coast to state school on another coast and shopping malls in between. And on hidden camera, we lured over 200 men and women into cars and vans on hidden camera to show how easy it was to lure a grown adult and get into a car with a total stranger. And it was far too easy. And it all boiled down to the dynamic of a good story. Everyone after the fact said, I knew this wasn't right. I knew this wasn't, something told me this wasn't right, but they still got into our cars, which told us their instincts were working, but they didn't listen. Why didn't they listen? Because it was a good story. It's something that seemed plausible, logical, so why would I not do whatever this person is asking me to do? So what are some of those more popular good stories that you should be aware of when simply navigating the streets, whether here or even back at home? First of all, someone asking for assistance. I referenced this before. This was the number one lure that most criminals use to gain their victims in this lure scenario, asking for help. Now, I don't want this to be a situation where the good people stop helping the good people, because if that happens, who's left? But we'll talk about in a second a couple of questions you ask yourself. I just want this to be on your psychological radar that when someone approaches you asking for help, it is the number one lure used. Keep that in mind. We'll get to other points of mitigation here in a second. But understand, that's the number one lure. Also, faking an emergency, because when there's an emergency, we're not thinking, we're doing what? We're reacting. And even worse, we're reacting out of our emotions. Critical thinking has fled the scene. Now we're in reaction mode because we want to be Superman and Supergirl. But think about it. If this person said there's a medical emergency, are you a doctor, nurse, EMT, or paramedic? No. Then what are you going to do? They say they're locked out of a car. Are you a locksmith? No. Then what are you going to do? But we don't think. We react. So keep in mind, emergency is also a close second for a very, very common and effective lure because it rattles us at that emotional level. Someone pretending to be an authority figure. Whatever that authority figure may be. It could be someone who pretends to be police or sheriff's department, hotel security. But if you don't see a local jurisdiction somehow indicate on them or see a local jurisdiction on the car they're driving, the flashing lights, no. An actual jurisdiction on the vehicle. This even happened to a couple I knew that were overseas. I had their travel agent tell me the story. One of the gentlemen, he was out for early morning run over in Budapest, and some of you that have been there know about the Rhine River and the bridge that connects the Buda to the Pest side. And he was out for early morning jog. He's going on the bridge. It's just him. He's out. He has his phone. He has his passport. And there's a gentleman on the bridge just strikes up a conversation with him that was obviously local to the area. And as they were having their conversation, a third gentleman approached. And he seemed to be this authority figure, and he was speaking to the first gentleman in their language and said, basically, oh, he's needing to see our passports or our identification. He said there's been some instances on the bridge here. They just need to know that we are, legitimate. We're not just soliciting or doing a drug deal. And so the gentleman who was a native pulls out his information and gives it to the would-be authority figure, the would-be police officer. So what did the American do? Oh, okay, I see what he's doing. So he pulls out his information, and the man asked for his phone. He thought it was a bit strange, but he handed him his phone. As soon as he had the phone and the passport, both of them ran away. Yeah, the whole thing was a ruse. And this is why I tell folks, predators are predators worldwide. A good story is a good story no matter where in the world you are. So in these type of situations, someone pretending to be an authority figure, if you don't see some visual, and I'm not talking about a badge, I'm talking about visual representation as far as what they're wearing or the car they're driving that has some type of jurisdiction on it, you have every right to politely but professionally question that authority figure. Someone pretend to be a service provider. Let's say you're in the hotel room. There's a knock on the door. Well, you didn't call the front desk. You weren't expecting anyone. Oh, I heard the air conditioner. Oh, I need something to check in the room. If you did not call them, you did not schedule them, you did not expect them, do not open that door. That's when you call down to the front desk and say, hey, I've got someone saying they're with building maintenance knocking on my door. Is this one of your people? Make sure you always verify would-be service providers. Also, someone pretend to be with the media. So let's say that after hours, you're out at a party, you're out at an after-hours event hosted by one of our sponsors, one of our vendors, and someone approach you, hey, I'm here from Wired Magazines. It's the International Legal Technology Association. Or let's say, oh, I'm with the National Law Journal. We're doing an article on the event here. I can print anything on a business card. In fact, years ago when we were doing those lures, we printed up one that said Manhattan Mauling Agency, Madison Avenue, New York, with an email and a phone number on it. And we used that at a very well-known Ivy League school where we lured 8 college students into a van off campus, pretending to be mauling agents. It was the whole idea of that ego and that fame. Oh, someone's interviewing me? Be very careful in those environments. If someone from ILTA has not told you that someone is there interviewing people and you've not cleared it with staff, be very wary of someone approaching you saying they want to interview you for some type of article or put you in some type of video. It could very well be just a good story. So what are 2 key questions that you can ask yourself to avoid such harm? Very simple. Number 1, and you don't have to write these down, your instincts will remember these. Number 1, what is this person asking you to do? So let me give you qualifiers. First of all, does it go against your instincts? Despite all outward appearances, does something still say to you that this person or this situation just isn't right? Yes? Then you already know everything you need to know. Your instincts have already done the advanced math. Go with your instincts. Also, does it just seem illogical or unusual? No, or you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, I just saw you pass several other people before approaching me. Why me? And you may not say that out loud, but certainly it should give you pause for thought. And then finally, does it call for a rushed response? Oh my gosh, someone's been hurt. I've locked myself out of the room. I've locked myself out. Whatever the case, the emergency, again, because it so rattles us at that emotional level. What is this person asking you to do? And then the second question, along with the first, where is this person asking you to go? Is it away from where you are? Is it away from who you are with? And then finally, is it somewhere isolated from view? If they can't pass these 2 simple questions, then you probably should not go anywhere with them. But what you should do is alert ILTA staff, as well as the hotel staff, as well as the venue staff, of this person making this approach, because chances are, if they're trying it on you, you're not the only one. 2 simple questions that can keep you safe. One of the dynamics we have to address today, it's something that could happen, something that has certainly been happening in other cities around the world, and could happen anywhere at any time. We've seen this now for several years. Protests and protesters. You're representing yourself, your firm, your company, and the International Legal Technology Association. Please keep this in mind. You're representing 3 entities, not just yourself, also your company, your firm, and ILTA. Also, the unknown principle we talked about from before, things to remember. That unknown person being an unpredictable person, and it is what you don't know about that person and how they will respond, especially given the emotionality of a protest or them being a protester. A lot of feelings, a lot of sentiments, a lot of emotions can come into play. You don't know how these folks will respond, so do not engage and enrage. Who has the better or greater numbers? If you happen to encounter a protest or a group of protesters, who has the greater numbers? So if something happens and now the situation starts to escalate, we talked about safety in numbers. We remember that? Who's got the greater numbers now? Will there be help nearby for you if needed? if this thing really gets out of hand, where is your backup at? They obviously have plenty of backup. They're moving in mass. Where is your backup? Is it really worth it to put your reputation, your job, your career, and your safety to the test? No matter what the group may be, no matter what they represent, no matter how much you may be opposed to it, go your way. Walk away. Do not engage and enrage it when you don't know where this is going to end up. And then finally, keep your ego and your temper in check. No matter what the group or individuals within that group may say to you, keep your ego in check, keep your temper in check, and simply walk away. And if that doesn't help, run away. But do not get caught in a situation that compromises you, your firm, your company, or ILTA itself. Yes, unfortunately, we have all heard stories of tragedies happening at public events, or not even at that event, but nearby. I remember several years ago, I was speaking at one conference, and we had a bomb threat, not at our event, but the IRS building that was next to our meeting place. There have been other situations where meetings have been canceled. I recall one national risk management conference that was postponed last year. They had to go in lockdown because an active shooter was in the downtown area. So all the buildings downtown, including the convention center, went into lockdown. And it postponed most of the events and most of the speakers and most of the sessions for the day. It can happen. In those type of environments where you're out in public or you're in an unfamiliar area, we talk about run, hide, and fight, but since most are not prepared for the final option, it's best to go with one of the two prior options, the run and the hide part. Keep in mind the difference, however, between cover versus concealment when running or hiding. Maybe no one has ever told you about that difference. We've often heard the phrase run for cover, but have you ever heard the phrase run for concealment? No, there's a reason. When people say run for cover, they mean run for protection. Run for a barrier between you and whatever the threat is. Concealment is simply something that can hide you. You may hide in the bushes. You may hide behind a curtain. You may hide under a desk, but that may or may not protect you if something is involved that has a projectile potential to it. So in those kind of situations, you're looking for cover. You're looking for concrete. You're looking for heavy metal. You're looking for things that can actually protect you, especially where projectiles, i.e. bullets, are concerned. So you're looking for the engine block behind the car. You're looking for the concrete column. You're looking for a cinder block wall, not drywall, but a cinder block wall. This is what we mean by cover versus concealment. Never allow drinking to put you at risk of extracting yourself or others at risk trying to extract you. Unfortunately, we saw this several years ago at a major concert event where shots were fired and a number of people lost their lives. And the thing that really struck me about watching that video, and I was on numerous radio shows from coast to coast when that happened, when they were saying, hey, what are our takeaways? Well, one blatant takeaway to me was seeing people who were so inebriated that they could not extract themselves, and other people had to put themselves at risk to go back in and extract their friends and family members who were so inebriated they could not run or extract themselves. Do not be that person that puts other people at risk because you cannot control your drinking. All situations, you are your own bodyguard. I've said this to audiences numerous times over the years. The only bodyguard that you and I get is the one we see when we look in the mirror. Order your life in that way so that if you do have reinforcements that show up, they're just that. They're enhancements, not necessities. Be your own bodyguard. Okay, let's talk about those happy hours and the social activities while you're here. Hey, I'm like everybody else. I like to have a good time, and we want you to have a good time. We want you to take advantage of all the social interactions you can. And while you're at it, have a few drinks along the way. Totally fine. But know your limits. Whatever your personal limits, stay far from them when in unfamiliar surroundings and around unfamiliar people, whether they're friend or foe. I recall several years ago, I was asked to speak at a Women Lawyers Association, and the president of the association, when we first got there, said, hey, want everybody to know the first round of drinks are on us. And I thought, okay, great. And I had a margarita. And they came back around and the president said, oh, by the way, Jeff, since you're our speaker, if you want, we'll be glad to buy you a second margarita. And I said, no, ma'am, you don't understand. First margarita, I'm your speaker. Second margarita, I'm your entertainment. Point being, I knew my limits, and I was not about to get there knowing the role I had to play at that event. Although her response was, waiter. So in those kind of situations, just know your limits and make sure you stay far from them. If drinking, take care of pictures or videos being recorded, whether you are in the foreground or the background. Oh, how many reputations have been put at stake or ruined over photos or videos at various parties, social events, etc. When things maybe got a little out of hand, maybe you weren't the focus of it. Maybe you were in the foreground, but you were in the background. And we all know about the phrase guilt by association. Be very careful when you see these coming out as social events where there's drinking involved, let alone heavy drinking involved. Never accept a drink that you did not see opened or poured in unfamiliar social settings. And again, folks, I don't care if it's a bottle of water. If you did not see it come to you unsealed, that you were able to break the seal or you didn't see it poured, no. All bets are off in those situations. Make sure you maintain control of those drinks. And you saw it from the point of the bartender to your hand and no other points in between. Be mindful of your drinks, never leaving a drink unattended. Again, male or female. I've already told you the stories. Hopefully it's already set in, but I just want to reiterate it one more time. Be mindful of those drinks. It only takes a split second. When I first got involved in speaking, actually it was back in around third grade. And you're thinking, Jeff, speaking in third grade? Yes. I did magic from elementary school through early college, including sleight of hand. I can tell you how easy it is to make something appear, including in your drink, when you're not paying attention. So make sure you maintain control of those drinks, because all it takes is a little sleight of hand to send you to the emergency room due to someone else's hidden agenda. All right, let's talk about a little personal reputation management while you're here at the event. Again, remember who you represent while attending. Yourself, your firm or your company, and the International Legal Technology Association as well. Those are 3 reputations, not just one. Keep that in mind as far as your activities and behaviors, whether on-site or off-site, on the clock or off the clock. Cameras abound in society today, but also every individual person is also a potential reporter. Everybody has the ability to record something and for that to go online. And I think most of us have seen on YouTube and TikTok where those things have gone out, something goes viral, people get doxxed, and now it can ruin their careers, can ruin their lives. People show up, they protest where they work, they show up at their home. All of these things because something got caught on camera that was never intended, but that doesn't matter because today everyone is a roving reporter. It may not be what you do, but what you say that is somehow captured on audio or video. I can tell you several instances, even the last month that I've been aware of things like this happening, where someone didn't have the camera pulled up, but they still hit record, and you could still hear the audio of what was being said. Be very careful in these environments, which is yet another reason to control your drinking, about what you say in certain environments, because it's very easy for someone to hit the record button. Other concerns or issues? What access do you represent back home, and who might wish to compromise that access? This is a conversation I've had year after year with that Society of Government Meeting Professionals. These are the people that put together events for all the alphabet agencies. And the one thing I've really, really tried to drive home to them is when you bring people together, like ILTA does, that come from various entities and various interests that have access to sensitive information, who might seek to compromise people that attend that event? Think about that. It could be competitors, it could be saboteurs, sure, it could be data thieves, but what access do you represent back home, and who might seek to compromise you in order to get that access? If someone approaches you, they may well be approaching others at the event as well. Please let us, meaning ILTA, know. If someone approaches you saying, hey, I understand you work for so-and-so law firm. Boy, yeah, we really like to do some work or things, but you can tell that this is going more into maybe a bribery type scenario where they're wanting to get access. They're not just using that against you. They're going to be doing that to other people attending the same event because you all come from a similar profession. You all represent very sensitive points of access. So if anyone approaches you inappropriately in one of these scenarios, please make ILTA staff aware as soon as possible because you will not be the only one they're approaching. They're there with an agenda. They're there for a reason, and they're not willing to leave. They've at least got one good point of return on their investment. Don't be that point of return on their investment. Any situation or time that you cannot recall leaves an open window for exploitation, especially via AI or deepfake technology today. Yes, AI. I know it's a point that's being brought up again and again in your industry, but I look at it from a very, very different standpoint. Let's say, and I'm not just throwing this out there without some sense of this story happening, you come to an event, you meet someone. That someone maybe goes up to your room, just like we talked about the young ladies before that lured the men upstairs to their hotel rooms. They slipped something in the drink. You're out cold. Maybe you had too much drink, or maybe they compromised the drink. But now you have no idea what happened maybe that night before until a week or 2 weeks later, you see pictures, you see videos, and you're thinking, my gosh, I don't even remember. Did I even do that? And now with AI and deepfake, you have to be really, really careful because someone obviously can create a representation of you saying or doing something. And if you don't have the ability to even recall, that's going to be a really, really tough situation. So again, all the more reason maintain control of your drinking or any other activities that you do, because now with deepfake and AI, that can be used to set you up for potential blackmail scenario to compromise you when you go back home. And here again, folks, it's not just your industry. I'm having the same conversation with countless other professions and industries, including those within the government. And I'm not kidding. Whether it's the CDC or DOD or whoever else, everybody now has to be aware of this being a dynamic moving forward. Phrases to remember. What happens in Vegas, again, no longer stays in Vegas, but it does stay on social media. We have seen the stories, every one of us, where people go back 5 years, 10 years, or more and find tweets, find videos, find points of compromise, find points of controversy that they bring forward, where people are doxxed, where people find out where you work, where you live, who your family members are. All of these things become fodder for those when it comes to those type of situations that go viral. So understand that even though you think this is just between you and another person, rarely is that going to be the case if something goes wrong. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If someone approaches you and seeks to compromise you as a point of access back home, there will be strings attached, no exceptions. And that means you. If it looks or sounds too good to be true, yeah, it probably is. No matter how good looking the guy or the girl is, no matter how good the situation sounds or how good the offer sounds, it will always come with strings. If it looks or sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if someone ever tells you, this is something that my mentor years ago, investigative reporter, constantly drilled into me. If someone tells you this is just between you and me, it is being recorded by someone. I learned that lesson back in the 80s working with the national media. If anyone tells you this is off the record, this is just between you and me, no. This is being recorded. You may not see the device, but this is being recorded for a later reminder. And then finally, trust your instincts. You know more than you think you know. You just have to give yourself credit for knowing it. If a situation, if a person doesn't seem right, that's all you need to know to remove yourself from the situation and bring that to the attention of both ILTA staff as well as the hotel or the venue staff. Make sure someone is aware of what is going on. You know more than you think you know. Please listen and trust your instincts. As far as closing thoughts, I cannot tell you how happy I was when the ILTA staff approached me about doing this video, because so many times over 3, closing on 4 decades, I've been called in after something happens, not before. And this is why my phrase over the years has been, my goal is to teach you how to spot trouble before trouble spots you. That's why I was so happy and so impressed that when ILTA approached me, it's not because anything has happened. They want to keep something from happening. They saw things that were just happening out there in the zeitgeist, and they said, no, we're going to get ahead of this. We're going to make sure our people are the safest attending conferences, meetings, and conventions that we can make them. And so kudos to ILTA for doing this. And not only that, but I mentioned this to them and they appreciate it as well. Some of you may have spouses, loved ones, significant others that also travel to meetings, conferences, conventions. Please, as their gift to you, share this video with those individuals as well to make sure they go and come back safely as well. This is all, again, about making you safer in your comings and goings. And also, you may have found there are certain points that we talked about today that apply to you just as much as an individual navigating this planet as a professional in the legal industry. Make sure you maintain these lessons, because they're not just lessons for work, they are lessons for life. And also remember, in the world of orange versus feathers, you always want to be the one perceived as wearing the orange. This is Jeff McKissack, President of Defense by Design, on behalf of the International Legal Technology Association, teaching you how to spot trouble before trouble spots you. Be safe out there.